Hello, my name is Evan Manning, and this is the embedded video for Module 8, the legal ramifications of staff evaluation. We were asked three main principles, the first being, what is the current evaluation standards with my school district? We use the McCrell tool as the primary guide for the evaluations themselves. This tool I have used, I believe now 4 times in the last 9 years. And I think it is effective in that I think that the teacher has a lot of information that they get to put into it, and they get a lot of accountability and directionality for choosing how and what gets looked at for evaluation. At the same time, I think with a different perspective that we have now, specifically from the perspective of the administrator, I do think that it's a little bit difficult because you are really relying on what that person does and trying to evaluate the singular choices that they're making. And I think that that can be somewhat difficult. As far as teacher recourse for inaccurate or unjust actions for evaluation principles or even for termination, we have a few things that I think sort of try to get resolved through that. As it is right now, at least according to the Board of Education policies, you have to first be on a plan of improvement for 1 yearly contract before termination, obviously barring some sort of a legal issue or like crime scenario. But as far as what you're doing in the classroom with your actual teaching principles, even if those things were not up to par, you would have to go on to a plan of improvement, have documentation of what those things were and what standards weren't being met and or what goals weren't being met to proficiency. And then you would have to be shown with, again, documentation, specific tangible artifacts and data points, how you still are falling short and therefore don't have contract renewal sort of as listed. Obviously, if the individual has issues with this problem, if it went to that point, obviously different types of organizations could get involved in unionization, but as far as the teacher themselves, they do have a right to a hearing in the Board of Education policies, and I at least don't know of a specific example in our district since I have been here that has had to go further than that. The second sort of tier of questions, if you will, was about a specific article that has been found. So I found an article from the Texas Classroom Teachers Association that occurred on September 14th, 2018, and it referenced a specific lawsuit from a teacher to the district. A little background information: the teacher had 13 years of experience, generally positive evaluations, proficient or above in all at least examined criterion according to the tool that they used. The specific year in 2017, they were reassigned to a different grade level of teaching and therefore had to sort of reteach and reevaluate how they were teaching. They also had some medical leaves of absence during that time period, and then after that were told that they would not be renewed with their contract. So she asked for a hearing, which apparently she had in their Board of Education policy, and through that specific year, they had to go back and look at the tool. They had to go back and look at how the evaluation occurred and what evaluation sort of principles and data points were there. They found that a lot of the evidence was very specific to that singular year, for good or bad. And in the initial ruling, she actually lost, and they said that they found enough reason for due process to have a non-wrongful termination or a justified termination. But then when the appeal process occurred, she won the appeal. And one of the specific data points that I thought was interesting, because it's not something that I really directly thought of as a potential administrator, and the exact verbiage was, there was not justifiable consistency with other district policies that were proven during the appeal process for termination. So basically, it comes down to that whether or not their specific tool was good or whether their specific tool showed that the teacher was not efficient or doing well enough on the personal evaluation was really negligible. The real issue was when compared to other districts, was their specific process fair, and would other districts make a similar determination based upon the data points collected? And they didn't prove or have any sort of comparative data with other districts. And then the state Supreme Court upheld that, and the teacher actually got back pay and was renewed. So I think that's something that's interesting that I haven't thought about. And as a head principal, if that ever happens, like that would be something that would need to be discussed with the current Board of Education policies, as far as like what are the similarities, or how do we sort of make sure that ours align with other regional, if not statewide, districts, so that obviously that doesn't happen in the singular circumstance. Which brings me as a transition to the third main point, which was my own potential future leader. How do we ensure those things? Obviously, everything I just said would be my first point, which is aligning them with other geographical or regional assertions as to how those similarities occur, to make sure that you don't have some sort of a sort of far out differentiated approach, because I think that sort of uniqueness leads also to sort of a red flag. Obviously, also aligning with central office and with the Board of Education principles, making sure that the individual tool that we use is one in which you're having sort of fairness and all those individual problematic areas sort of factored in to make sure those things are avoided. And then specifically as an evaluator, making sure that I am keeping to that tool and not diverting from that, where those individual distinctions can be problematic as if there's not consistency there. And lastly, data, and more data. This will go specifically into the interview that I've already done with my head principal for a future module. But in that conversation, another thing that was discussed with evaluation was making sure that you have specific data points and artifacts that you have for two reasons. Obviously, yes, to protect yourself in this specific question of how to be legally safe as far as evaluation principles, but also to be able to help the teacher. Because when you say sort of generalized things like, oh, you could have been more persuasive, you could have done a better job with organization here, or been more engaging to your class, I think if the follow-up question is, okay, how, it sometimes is difficult to be able to specify like a specific or articulated issue that could have been modified, or a behavior that could have been changed. And without that, how are you actually helping engage and continue that improvement by your individual faculty and staff? And with that, the data points not only are there, and the artifacts are not only there for your protection, but also to be able to improve the individual staff as well. And that would be something that I would want to be focused on. Thank you.